Okay, good morning. Hemshech Ayin Beis, Volume 3. We're on top of page 1455. To sum up what we've learned yesterday in the previous class, the paragraph beginning in the middle of page 1454, I'm sorry, 1454, he said, Makol Zeh, from all the above that we've learned, we'll understand the example of vision, of eyesight, Riyas Ayin, in explaining the function and you can even say the method of how neshamas work in this world, neshamas lamata. And the example works like this. You look at a human being, we know when you have vision in your eyes, it's the power of vision. So it's a particular faculty. But the vision does not originate in the physical eye. It originates in the soul. A corpse, God forbid, has physical eyes, and they may be perfectly intact, but can't see. So the power of vision is a soulful power. We call it koiches hanefesh, from the powers of the soul, the faculties or the senses of the soul, just as the power of sight. So you have two aspects here. You have the sight, the vision as it manifests in the eye, but it's the power of vision that's manifesting in the container called the physical eyes, which those two combined allow us to see the world around us. So if the Oir Hariyah, the Koyach Hariyah, was not there, we couldn't see. On the other hand, if we didn't have the physical eye, we also couldn't see this physical world. But we also see that in order to be able to see, you cannot just rely purely on the power of vision and on the container, the instrument, let's call it the instrument, the vessel, the eye vessel. You also need to have light. If it's dark, an eye can't see. Not that the eye doesn't have the power to see. That's why you could also see sometimes in the dark if there's a little, but it cannot actualize. So the light plays a role to illuminate the environment, the room, in order for the person to be able to see. How does that apply to a soul? The same idea. The power of a soul, like the power of vision, is rooted in a high level, all the way in the highest levels we learned in Atzilus and Sheirish Shoshe, in the root of roots, Lamaylam Atzilus, all the way in Atzmus Ein Sof. But then the soul travels. It travels through Ishtalshelus, through the cosmic order, until it manifests inside of a body and an animal soul and a material world. Just like the power of vision in the soul manifests in a physical eye vessel. And here, though the soul has that power, has the divine power that we just described, but to actualize it, it needs an outside light. It needs something to illuminate it, to empower it. That's the Oir. In this, though the Oir has many aspects, here he's talking about the Oir of the Malachim. And that's what the role of the Malachim do. They are inspirers. They're essentially like role models that inspire, and they can ignite the soul to access its innate, inherent power, just like light, sunlight, or candlelight, or any light that allows the eye to see. That's the analogy. So, and then the Rebbe Rashab continued in details by describing that this is only a siyua bilvad, it's only a support. But who sees? It's the soul, it's the eye itself that sees. If you had a light shining and the eyes were closed, or a person can't see, doesn't have eyes, or is blind, the light won't help. So the very sight is the eyes are seeing, but they're seeing with the support, with the light that's shining. You know, another example I gave was you're riding on a road. The road is a dark road. You're driving the car. So you need headlights or some external light to shine so you see where the road is, so now you can drive. If you only had a light, you didn't have a vehicle, you could see how to walk, but the bottom line is, you're the driver. The neshama is the one that's effectuating and actualizing this avodah. What avodah is it? It's to transform this world, the words that are used here, to transform this world and the animal soul and all the dvarim tachtenim That's what the soul has the power to do. That comes with the siyur, with the support of this light, the malachim, but it's the neshama itself that does it. In addition to refining the animal soul, there's also the work of the neshama itself to actualize its own potential. And what potential is that? It's avarabba, it's great love and pleasure, and the taste we talked about, the tam, like the sweetness that the soul experiences. That's also the neshama. The neshama has those powers. So in a way you could say, like I gave the example of it's a child prodigy. Someone's born with a tremendous musical talent, but it's innate. It's innate and dormant within the person. Someone that recognizes the talent, an educator, a teacher, a music teacher, who recognizes and trains and elicits, brings out from the student, from this child, its prodigal blessings, which is the blessing of music, but it has to be brought out by the teacher, even though it's the person himself who's the prodigy. But here he's talking about both aspects. So that's bringing out the very faculties of the divine soul in expressing that profound love, including the love of B'chol Meidecha, he adds, because that goes back to what we learned earlier, that B'chol Meidecha is the highest level of Ava, even higher than Ava B'tainugim. He described Ava B'chol Meidecha as total absorption, total absorption in the divine. All that's actualized. The light supports them. Malachim help get there, but it's the neshama itself that does that. And the second thing, which he spoke about first, which also is the refinement of the animal soul. Okay. And this is all due to the neshama's tremendous power, rooted in Atzilus, and the root of roots in Atzmus Ein Sof. That's why it has this Ava. And Riyan Elikus. And this is why it's also called, through this, Ishin Einai. That God calls the Jewish people, Ishin Einai, you are the Ishin Einai, that God, Moshe says it, Ishin Einai, you are the pupil of God's eye. What does that refer to? What's the pupil? The pupil is not just the eye, it's the pupil of the eye. We'll soon learn more about it. But the pupil of the eye is more than just the eye, and that is the neshamas, the Eina Pekicha, the open vision, the open eyes of Atik, and to draw that down into Ishtalshlus. Ein Hashem El Yurev, like he discussed earlier. And what the angels do is only a siyur bilvad. So what do we see from this? That Eir Hariyah, the power of vision, like souls, like the power of vision, is not really a Eir HaMakabel. It's an Eir that's a Mashpiyah. It's not a Makabel. It's not like the moon. The moon, its only light is what it receives from the sun. In a vision, the eye itself sees, but it needs the light to allow it to see. So it's an Eir HaMeir Be'etzem, only coming down below, it needs the support of the angels, and through that ignites and that reveals, and that gets the flames, the Iru Edom, that the fire, the light of the souls themselves should radiate and illuminate. That's a summation of what we learned yesterday. I'm ready to continue, and we'll get more details you'll see in this till we get to the end of this paragraph, where he's going to sum up this whole section and bring together many more details, as we'll see momentarily. But if anybody wants to ask anything, please, you can do so. Then I'll continue here. Okay. So the second line on page 1455. And the pages can be found, for those that want to follow the text, at ayinbeis.com. Someone asked me about it. Ayinbeis.com is a part of ChasidusSupply.com. It's just a dedicated page within that website itself. So you can really find it both ways. Okay. And now, Nizbar Le'il, it was explained earlier. What was explained earlier? On page 1364. She's taken us back quite a while. Talking about now 90 pages back. She said there, when he's speaking about Eir Hariyah, I mentioned yesterday, remember the 3 levels of Eir in Malchus. Generally, they're all called Makabel, even though we just explained that Riyah is not really a makabel. It is a makabel because it does need to receive the light that shines in order for it to see, but it's not fundamentally a makabel because it itself sees. And la'asad lavi, the eye will see without outside light. So he said there, if you recall, go back to 1364, he said, what's the difference between these three examples? He said, they're all malchus. They're all makabel. Levana, however, is malchus of Bria. Eir ha-even teiv, a luminous stone, is the malchus of Yitzira. And Eir ha-riyah is the malchus of Asiya. That's what he said. Let's just make sure. Let's go back. Aleph Shin Samar Dalet. Yeah. Gimel Ilmas Biyah. Malchus Asiya b'chinas ayin. And then he added, "V'nod seifim b'tchilasan," that a Malchus Asiya has ha'ara, has a reflection that's greater than Malchus of Bria, which is what he then goes on to explain, just to jog your memory, that Mikra is Basiya, but Mikra is rooted in Chabad of Atzilus. So Mikra is like Riyah in that sense. So I'm not going to go into now the explanation of that. That was something we discussed. It wasn't so clearly spelled out in Ayin Beis, but we did discuss it back then when we learned those pages. But what's relevant here, he wants to add that moshel de'era riyah hu b'chinas malchus da'asiyah, that the moshel of vision or eyesight is the level of malchus of asiyah. V'yesh b'zeh gili elyon yesem me'be'elam abriyah, like I just read from 1364, and this has a higher gili than the elam abriyah, which refers to like the moonlight. Hainu, what does that mean? So now we can understand a little more what that means. Hainu kanal. That means, like we just learned, kanal, kinisbar le'il, shazel b'chinas haneshama, because it's referring to the soul, kamashiyarda lamata, how the soul descended below, v'nislapsha guf v'nefesh habamis, and manifested in the body and the animal soul. You don't say that about Malchus of Bria or Malchus of Yitzira. They remain somewhat higher. We're talking about here, it goes all the way into Asiya. So it's Malchus of Asiya, but at the same time, it has something that the others don't have. It's higher because it's rooted in a higher place. Like we said, because Neshamas are rooted higher, that's why they can come down below and transform this world. In other words, the more something comes down lower and is able to transform, means it has a higher root. As we learned on the previous page and also earlier when he spoke about this on page on page 1450 as well. So that helps understand the Malchus of Asiya, that's Erariya, but it's rooted in a higher place. And he's going to explain now details about this. That's what he's adding now. So bottom line is that he's going to now include that what happens, till now we've been learning about the soul's effect on the world and on the animal soul and on itself. That by coming down below, right, the soul has that power, but with the siyua, with the support of the angels, of the malachim, the neshama has that in a sense triggers the innate, inherent power of the soul, that the soul can do its work in transforming the animal soul, the world, and also to bring out its own deepest love and pleasure toward godliness, and taking pleasure in godliness. So now he's going to add something more in this aspect, that this all happens not just despite the fact that we come down below, but because of it. In other words, you could say, okay, that the soul has such much power, it has the power to even illuminate a dark world like ours and the animal soul. What he's going to explain now is by the soul coming down below, that itself causes the soul to express and reveal its tremendous power. Like the examples we've learned about when the father conceals himself from the child, it's in order to elicit the ingenuity of the child to bring out deeper resources. So every resistance, every concealment is in order to bring out something deeper. That's what he's going to add. So it's interesting here. The neshama above, in its highest root, is one thing with the atzmus. Like you said, it's rooted in atzmus ein sof, or on a lower level in atzilus. That's not the kavanah. The purpose is to make a dira b'tachtenim. So the soul comes down and has to engage and manifest and completely get immersed in this world. So now the neshama is faced with a paradox. On one hand, it's rooted in a very high level, but now it's facing all kinds of challenges. So yes, it has its inherent powers, because that doesn't disappear. That remains with it, but they're concealed, especially in Golus, as we learned. So Hashem sends the malachim and sends different resources to help illuminate and trigger the powers of the soul. But additionally, the concealment itself of this world also does that. So, in other words, the fact that we have to contend with and deal with the darkness, that brings out our deepest strengths. So this is in addition to the support that we get through Seder Shtalshlos, the Malachim, namely, we also going to get this now, it's going to come through the very darkness itself. So this is going to begin now a new section that's especially going to be explained in the next paragraph, Bir Inyan, about how the darkness affects the neshama. And this brings us back, and I'll tell you how I understand what the Rebbe Rashab is doing here in the most eloquent way. He's bringing it back to connect it to that which we learned before page 1350. You remember there we were speaking about the interface Mamata Lamayla. Adumim Chalakaya Melech, from the bottom up through tefillah, through prayer, and Einoid, that even in the distress and even in the very deep concealment and the abyss, down below, we also find the divine that's rooted in Helam Atzmi. When it comes to Torah doesn't have the abyss. The Torah always remains a divine light. The same thing with all of Ishtalshlos, the Malachim included. They are light. They don't reveal Etzem because they ultimately are forces of revelation. The Torah is connected as well to the highest levels, but it's still through Torah, it's through revelation. It's only the neshama that has the etzem, rooted in the helama atzmi. It comes down below through the support of Torah and Einei Ha'eda, the leaders, the teachers, and the malachim who are called Einei Hashem. The neshama gets triggered. The inherent powers of the neshama get revealed, and now the neshama has both qualities: the quality of etzem and the quality of gilui, that comes through Ishtalshlos, namely the angels, as we're discussing here. But in order to make the connection, ultimately, we have to also address the very Helam itself. You know, we spoke about Yedaita Yem Vashaves Levacha Ke'avayu Elikim B'Shamayim Emal V'Aretz Mitachas. He explained the beginning of volume 3 that still Havaya is shining through Elikim. It's not the power of Elikim itself. It's not the power of concealment itself, of the Reshimu and the root of the containers in the Helam Atzmi. It's showing that even in Elikim, even the Tzimtzum, is also a force of revelation. It's also in order to reveal, and the revelation is in order to travel through the Tzimtzum. But what about the very Tzimtzum itself, the very concealment itself, or an Aveda, the very animal soul itself? What happens with that? So we've learned how the Neshama transforms it. But now we're going to learn how it actually becomes part of the process of drawing out from the Neshama these deeper strengths, which only a neshama has, not malachim, to transform this world. So it's a combination of both the challenges, but also the resources we need. One without the other is not enough. If a person, for example, has deep challenges, tonight is Tisha B'Av, a very dark night, right? But if you only have challenges, you also have to have resources. So the resources is, say, the Ishtalshlos and the malachim, the Birchis Yetzer. The neshama has its own inherent resources, but they're not revealed. So now, when you have the challenges in life that the neshama is facing, you have the support, the siyua of the light of the angels, then you have all that you need. So now he's going to describe what does the challenge do for the neshama. So he said, the neshama come down, Eira Asiya, it's malchus of Asiya, meaning the neshama coming down below. Va'inyanhu. And this is the Inyan now. Now we're going to learn this inside. Tehine mashikosev, yatzreinu ki'ishin einoi, that you have formed us like the pupil of your eye. like the pupil, he's saying here in the third person, the pupil of his eye, that God formed us. With the expression is, like we said, Yatsar Nuhu, Ishen Einai. That's the pasuk in Hazinu that we're talking about. So now he says like this, that when it says that, Hine Ishen Ayin, the pupil of the eye, Hu Hashachash Ayin. That's the dark part of the eye. You look at the eye, you see there's a white part. There's the pupil of the eye is the dark part. There's the iris. There's the white part of the eye. The pupil of the eye is specifically the darker part. The ikar hariyah, because the primary vision, and here you see how the example of eyesight and vision becomes even more intricate and even more connected to the neshama. The ikar hariyah mashachash ba'ayin dafka. The primary sight of a person comes from the darker part, because the darker is like the filter that allows in the proper amount of light for you to be able to see. See, this explains elsewhere why you call a blind person sagi nohar. So this says, what's that? That's like loyeg l'rosh's expression. Loyeg l'rosh means like you're laughing. It's being you're being sarcastic. Say a blind person is filled with light. That's what sagi nohar means. A lot of light. He's the opposite. He's blind. He's in the dark. So Chassidus says no. That's exactly the problem. By a blind person, the filters, the dark of the eye is not adequate. So it's like blinding him, because like looking at the sun without filters. So it's the darkness of the eye that allows, like there's just like the shutter on a camera. The camera is not just the light that shines through the camera, it's also the filters that allow you to get the picture. Because without that, there'd be no focus, it would be blurred, or it'd be just white light. So he says, so the ikar hariyah is from the shachash ba'ayin, dafke. And he brings a raya from Medrash. Ukedi b'Medrash Rabbah, Emer, Pasha Lamed Aleph. Like it says in Medrash Rabbah, Pasha, chapter 31, Vayikra Rabbah, Emer, Hal Galgal Hazeh Shel Ayin, this sphere, or this what he calls Galgal of the eye, essentially the eye vessel. So the Medrash says, a person does not see through the whiteness of the eye, but from the dark part. And he brings the apostle, from the darkness I created for you light. In other words, it's a light that's coming through darkness. So now an additional element in understanding the vision. And remember, we'll soon talk about the light from the malachim, but we'll get there. So what does this mean in Avodah? That's the physical example. What does it mean that the light comes from the darkness of the eye? V'hainu, tizgalos hakeches atzmin de neshama, the revelation of the core faculties of the soul that on their own remain dormant, they remain concealed. How do they get revealed? How do you draw out when someone has tremendous power, but they're not actualizing it? What do? So we know you challenge them. You need resistance. If you want to bring out someone's strength, you can't just, let's say, how much strength do you have in pushing your arm? So you can push, we don't know. It's only when someone else resists and stops you and tries to limit and impede your way, that's when you see how strong you are. So in other words, it's the impediment, or what you call it here, the darkness, that brings out the greatest strengths of the neshama. Lamaila, a neshama does not reveal those strengths because it's not challenged. It's the challenges that bring out the deepest strengths of the neshama. So he says, "These galus hakechas asmin neshama." How does it reveal? Hu al yedei hanefesh habamis. That's revealed through the animal soul. When you have to deal with an animal soul that resists and actually battles. Is that battle? It's a battle, like he explains in Tanya at length, chapter 9 and on, the battle between the animal soul and the divine soul. So that battle is what brings out the keiches atzmim, the core faculties of the neshama. Because now that the soul is rooted in atzmus ein sof, like we discussed, and the neshama is got divine, and its very core entity. Etzem Mitziyusa, its very essence, is divine. Like Yeklen explains in Tanya chapter 2, it's divine. As was discussed earlier at length. So clearly he's referring to much of Ayin Beis, talks about this in many different places. But especially recently, specifically earlier, where we spoke about what the neshama is like. That's why dafka the neshama, no other force in all of existence, in all the cosmic order, from the highest levels to the lowest levels, no other force has the power to come down and mevarer and separate and clarify and refine and repair the animal soul. Because it's an atzmi, because the neshama is atzmius, a core entity, not just a revelation. So that's why it has that core power to transform this world and the animal soul. One second. One second. Yeah. Hainu. That means shehi mebchinas atzmus alakus. The neshama comes from the core of the divine. And let's explain what that means. Like the difference is when you build a building, let's say for your child. So your son or your daughter, that's your child, they're etzem, they're part of your etzem. The contractors, the workers, the people who are managing the property, building the property, managing it, are also your messengers. They also work for you, but they're not your etzem. They're a means to an end. They're service men, basically. They're like the support system. But the atzmus of Elikus is the neshama. V'hi Elikus be'etzem. He repeats again. It's Elikus be'etzem. The etzem, yeah. Al kain be'keich v'yecholto. And that's why it has the power and the capacity. L'saken nefesh abamis, to repair the animal soul. V'chol hadvarim tachtenim. And all things in this lowest of worlds. The neshama has that power. If the neshama was just if it was just another creature, another part of the creation, then how does it have the power to change the creation? Like we say, you can't change a system from within the system. You can't solve a problem from the same system where the problem was created, because we're all part of the same reality. But a neshama is an agent that comes from a different reality. It comes from atzmus of elikus, etzem elikus, like you said, elikus be'etzem. That's why it can come into this world and transform it. This is not in the power of angels, because they're only creations. They're high-level creations, entities that are divine creations in the sense they sing God's praise and they're aware of godliness and all the different levels. But they don't have this atzmis dika power. And due to this fact, yesh b'neshama keach lishtabe begufa demalka. So because the soul is rooted in this highest level, it has the power lishtabe to bind itself in the very guf, the very body, like we learned, devarim demalka, the very body of the king, not just an expression of the king, but the very body of the king. Ba'ava rabba, with tremendous love, uba'ava b'tainugim, and with the love of delights, of pleasures. Like we learned about pleasure, that it's more than just love, it's with the full pleasure. Due to its root and its source. Generally, shadish is higher than root. Shadish is higher than mukkah's source. So he may be referring to Atzilus and higher than Atzilus, Atzmus and so, but it says Sharsha Mekeda. Shazeu Ika Mitziyusa. This is the primary Mitzias of the neshama. What is he adding in the parentheses? You could say, okay, the neshama has that in its root. But once it comes down below, maybe the neshama has now assumed other properties. So it says, no, even the neshama below retains its asmizdika power. That's its ikar mitzias. And even when the soul came down below, it did not change. Its fundamental personality did not change. Also when it descended below into the cosmic order. So all this comes to explain the power of the soul. So then what's the role of the others, of both the Nefesh Habamis that draws out this power and the Malachim? So he says, Ach kol zehu ba behelam. However, all this that we just described about the tremendous power and potency of the soul is within the soul concealed. It's not revealed. And the way the soul is above, he's now adding furthermore, not just that the soul below is concealed, even the neshama above, before it comes down to this world, even though it has Hagam, Shi Basog Gedela, Belakus, it has a tremendous comprehension of godliness, because that's what a soul is. Uba'ava v'yira, and with love and reverence. Makom mokim ein bo b'chinas ava rabba v'ava b'tanugim. Nevertheless, the soul above does not have that powerful love and the love of pleasures. Only when it comes down below is that revealed. So again, the soul has the potential. Below it's concealed, everything is concealed. Even above, it doesn't have the power of avad abba v'ava tainugim. He's adding something here. And how do we know this? Baraya. And the proof for that is Shari Neshamis Lamaila. Because the soul's above. I feel in Neshamis Atzilus. Even the Neshamis of Atzilus. Hey Muruchokim Akav. It says in Kabbalah Chassidus, he speaks about it in Geras HaKedah Simon Chav, that even the souls in Atzilus are distant from the Kav. The Kav, remember, is the ray of light, the laser beam that came after the Tzimtzum, that illuminates and creates all of existence. It's also only a Kav. But even the Neshamas of Atzilus are distant from the Kav. It says, Misham Nifradu. As a matter of fact, he says in the Geras HaKedah, they separated from the Kav. So we see from this that Neshamas Lamaila, even in Atzilus, are distant even from the Kav, let alone higher levels. So this is the Neshamas even Lamaila. We're not talking about Neshamas in the root and the Etzem. There, it's all part of the Etzem. There's nothing is revealed because it didn't do any Aveda. There, the Neshama is just part of the Etzem. Like he said, Etzem Elikus. Okay, in the parentheses, the Rebbe Rashab qualifies. For Tzarechiyun, I'll just read it and then I'll go back and explain it all. So there's a lot going on here, a lot of not run on, but a lot of overlapping ideas. So let me just finish reading and then I'll explain it all. When you say that the neshamas above are distant from the kav, tzarechiyun means it's a question. We need to understand. Tzarechiyun means it's necessary to immerse ourselves, to delve into this. So it's an expression used to express a question. So that in chapter 37 in Tanya, there he says, Lo yagilu l'maylas dveikusei b'Hashem. That a neshama below cannot reach the dveikus, the cleaving and the connection that a neshama has above, which seems to contradict what we just said. Here he's saying the neshamas above are distant from the kav. And Avarabba and Avabetainugim is only in the neshamas below, as we'll learn momentarily, due to the challenges that the neshama faces. So, but in Tanya, it says that the neshamas above, the neshamas below do not have the ability to have the dveikus as they are above. So he says with Tzarech Leimer, you have to say, he's answering this. The Mekom Mokim ein ze ein l'shtaba begufa demalka. What he says in chapter 37 is, yes, it's higher in revelation to the souls below. Obviously, Neshama Vatsilis has more revealed expression of the divine than Neshama below, which is more concealed. But still, even in Atsilis, you don't call it Ashtaba Begufa de Malka. It's not that it's connected to the guf of the Melech. Shazen Nasa Be'elam Hazeh Dafke. That happens only in this world. And look at Likutei Torah, which is in Bamidbar Sinai Be'el Meid, the Maimer in Bamidbar, first Maimer there. So what he's saying here basically is this, that not just the neshama below, but even the neshama in higher worlds does not actualize all its potential. It's only in this world that it does. And the contradiction from Tanya is that saying that neshamas atzilus are higher than neshamas below in their revelation, but they still don't reach the etzem of Avarabba v'Avabetainugim that connects Lashtaba B'Gufa Demalka, which happens only in Elam Hazeh. So then how does a neshama actualize this tremendous power if it's concealed and above, also in the world's higher worlds, it's also not in the highest level. So he concludes, by neshama engaging and working with and separating, clarifying, and refining the animal soul, that's what reveals in the soul, in the divine soul, its core faculties, its greatest potential in the great love and the love of pleasures, which happens only down below, not above. So what he's added here is that now we understand the shachar sheba'ayin. Why is the eyesight, the primary eyesight from the darker part? The darker represents the darkness that the soul has to contend with when it has to deal with the animal soul. And so the animal soul, when the shama engages and exerts itself, it needs to exert itself. It's a milchama, it's a war. That battle brings out the neshama's greatest faculties, which is rooted all the way in the etzem. And the support for all of this is birchas yetzer of the malachim that help the process, help inspire, help us do that both in softening and taming the animal soul, and also in helping the neshama process and reveal its inner faculties. But he's added, the main point he's added here is the resistance of the animal soul and its role in this whole process. So it's not just that the divine soul is overwhelming. It's actually the animal soul that brings out the divine, the neshama's greatest strengths. That's what he's added here. And that is now going to be the theme for the next number of pages in describing this aspect of how darkness brings out deeper light. So we weren't discussing that recently. Recently, we've been talking much more about how that light manifests in existence. But now is, as I said, very clear to me, at least, that he's going to combine what we learned before page 1350 and with after 1350. So you have both Oyer and Chesed coming together. If you remember the discussion of the sweetening of the Gvuras, so the first approach was that the light, that the sweet overwhelms, overshadows, or neutralizes the bitterness. Then comes the level that the bitterness are transformed by the sweetness. But then comes that the bitterness itself is transformed. It itself, like the shachar sheba'ayin, the darkness itself, it's transformed and gives the power and allows the neshama to reach its highest levels of revealing its power from the, he doesn't say helam ha'atzmi here, but clearly it's from the helam ha'atzmi that has the power to come down and below and have these highest levels of ava rabba and ava betanugim that we're learning about, the deepest sweetness, even higher than the sweetness above in the higher level, in the higher worlds. Yeah. And just to finish what he said earlier, and in this process, the neshama is also elevate the malachim, achalti yari im divshi, that we also eat the honeycomb or the sugar cane, because they supported and helped bring out the sweetness in the soul. So they too are elevated in this process. So it's interesting. So the nefesh habamis ultimately also helps elevate the angels, which is the root and the source of the nefesh habamis, as we learned earlier. As we learned earlier, he said it clearly. Yeah, he said apizeh. Just 1 second. So let me just one more thing I want to just see. Give me 1 second. Yeah. On page 1444, he said, Yes, Yisun al Malachim. That's all the midas. Okay. So that sums up, and we just finished the paragraph on page 1455. Okay. Any questions?
That means that the Helam Atzmi or the darkness is really not darkness. The whole purpose is to bring out the power of the neshama.
Well, we know that the Helam Atzmi of the Eibishter is a tremendous force. It's just beyond Gilui. And yeah. So he doesn't explicitly state Helam Atzmi here. I did, because I was connecting it to what we learned earlier. But that's correct. The Helam below that we see as concealment, Golus, for example, which is a negative thing, ultimately, like the Tzimtzum, is rooted in God's power to conceal, God's power to restrain, God's refrain, even you can call it the type of the power of restraint, the power of holding back. Yeah.
Maybe it's connected to the answer about the Holocaust. There's no OCS for that, but this makes the Gilui the ultimate Gilui.
Yeah, but what we respond back to that is Hashem could have done it a different way. He didn't have to do it dafka this way with so much pain.
Yeah,
But
there's no OCS.
ultimately, yes. Ultimately, we can't explain why the Holocaust happened, but you could explain how it happened. Meaning it's a result of the Helam, of the Tzimtzumim, yes.
It's a little bit of a paradox what we just discussed here, because first we talked about saying Birchos Yotzer before Shema, so that the angels could sort of, stir up the neshama to essentially shine, if you will, and to be able to do its job here. Why? Because it's concealed in the body. It's stuck. It's not able to shine like it is.
Hold on 1 second. That's not why. Why is because the angels are a very good example. Think of them as an inspiring teacher. When you see a teacher that's inspired, so it helps you. What you mean to say is that the neshama is needed because they don't, in this world, their own innate love. Like I gave the example of the prodigy. You can have a person who's tremendous potential and live his whole life and never comes revealed. Then he meets somebody, a mentor, and that's the example I'm giving for the angel that inspires and ignites the innate power within him. I'm just wording it. Maybe that's
okay. Fair enough, but nevertheless, it's still that power, talent is still concealed, and it's concealed because it's stuck in the body. So that's the point I wanted to make. And but that's on the one hand. On the other hand, it's the body. You're saying the Helam, the darkness, the concealment that brings out the greatest forces of the neshama. So it's a little bit of a paradox. On the one hand,
what's wrong with a paradox? What's wrong with a paradox?
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's an interesting paradox.
Well, it's a fundamental one about all chassidus is based on this principle that dafke tachtenim is a dira for atzmus, not elyonim. That's where atzmus is revealed, and that's where the yofa shah achas. The Mishnah says, yofa shah achas, 1 hour of tshuva ma'asim tovim in this world is more valuable, more yofa than all the pleasures in the world to come. Right? Kol chayim, not pleasures, in all of the world to come. Then it says in the same Mishnah that 1 hour of pleasure in the world to come is more powerful yofa than all the pleasures in this world. Is that a paradox? But yes. Number one is we're not afraid of paradoxes. Number two, that's part of life. That's like saying, a child in its mother's womb is completely protected, but it will never actualize its talents until it has to become independent and has the ability to fall and make mistakes. That's the nature of all growth. Growth itself is a paradox. That growth comes only when you're challenged. If you stay comfortable, you never will reveal that power.
Yeah, well said.
I also think it's hashkacha pratit that we are learning this today because it's Erev Tisha B'Av and we're not allowed to study any Torah. So ultimately, Hashem is this is a way that since you don't have the light of the Torah, you have to actually delve into this deepest level and cry out to be able to actualize this level of neshama we're talking about.
By all means, absolutely. Yeah.
But as George is saying here, we have, Erev Tisha B'Av, so we have the greatest pain. So what are we saying here? That I can understand how the pain, the darkness, the concealment can lead to the greatest joy, the descent for the ascent. But what we're saying here, the Rebbe is saying here, is that pain is also going to be considered the ultimate tainugim.
I don't see him saying that anywhere here. It's not. That's
the
Helamatzmi. Deriving it from here, he doesn't talk about that here.
The Helamatzmi is going to be shown where.
That's what I'm saying. Helamatzmi, I brought into the picture to just connect it to what we learned earlier, but he doesn't mention Helamatzmi here, and he's not talking about the transformation of pain to joy or darkness to light. Here he's talking about that the darkness of the animal soul and the challenges it presents brings out the deepest strengths of the neshama. He doesn't talk about that transformation. That he spoke about earlier when he spoke about Einoid, where I talked about the Gvuras Nimtokim B'Sharsham, that the Gvura itself gets transformed by connecting to the Helama Atzmi. Just want to explain. This doesn't say that here. I was just connecting it to broaden the picture of Ayin Beis.
I see. But getting back to my question there is that the if we can say, remember what was the term, the destruction is almanat, leave note, what is the destruction, the pain is part and parcel of the process of the it's not a separate thing, it's part of the ultimate revelation, the ultimate joy and the thing. It's just it's the first stage of it, so to speak. So are we going to say like that the darkness of concealment of tragedy that it will ultimately, or the darkness of Gullus, as the Rebbe said in that famous letter, I think when he was a young child, that he will ultimately see how all of Gullus was a blessing.
Oit Hashem kenaf to be, yeah.
Yeah. So isn't that what the Rebbe is alluding to here with the pupil of the eye?
No, not alluding to it at all. Look. Eliezer, let me just tell you. What you're talking about is a very legitimate topic and very Tisha B'Av related and deserves plenty of discussion. I just, as you know, create real strong boundaries. Not at all what he's talking about here. There's nothing here about that. This, if you want to understand that, I would take you back to this page. I'll tell you exactly what he talks about. You want me to show you the page? You want to look at it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Go back to the pages. Pages 1345 and on. That's where he talks about and even earlier than that. Is it connected to what we're learning here? Yes, there's a connection, but it's not what he's addressing here. Here he's addressing what the darkness does for the divine soul. He's not talking about the transformation of the darkness itself.
Okay.
Connected because at the end of the day, the Nefesh Habamis and this world has darkness. And actually, if you continue learning, we didn't go on, he's going to talk about Shcheira Niv and how darkness brings out the deepest light. And yes, that is going to ultimately connect to the transformation. I'm just making that qualification. As I said, the topic is a legitimate one. It's just he hasn't said it. And I just want to make it clear that it's not stated here.
Okay.
I mean, unless you could show me a line you're referring to. I didn't see anything here that talks about the transformation. It is talking about transforming the animal soul, but he's not talking about that the very darkness being transformed. He did talk about it earlier with Einoid. That was the whole point of Einoid.
Okay.
But anyway, if you have a question about that, I'm happy to answer it.
Right.
I just wanted to make that distinction. What's the question you're asking about that?
No,
what does it mean? That the darkness itself is transformed?
Yeah, the challenges of Olam Hazeh Gashmi and concealment will bring us, I think the Rebbe is going to bring us to the ultimate pleasure and ultimate aliyah.
He did say here. Yes, that he said, but that's it.
But the challenges themselves, those challenges.
He did say that the animal soul, he said clearly, through it is revealed the core faculties of the neshama, the highest levels of Ava, Rabba, and Ava B'Tainugim. That was said here.
So that concealment, the black pupil of the eye, the likeness, the light that comes from the pupil, the darkness of the pupil, is that in order to bring it out, or is that also going to be seen itself, the transformation? I guess that's Einod.
Well, he's not talking about the transformation. That's what I'm trying to say here. He talked about that earlier.
Okay.
He talked about that earlier. Ultimately, yes, that's exactly what he said, that the darkness in this world, it will be revealed how it's rooted in the Helama Atzmi of Atzmus, which means God is higher than revelation. In other words, Gilui below reveals the Giluyim of Elikus, and Helam below reveals the level of the divine that's beyond revelation. That's what we learned at length earlier. That's the punchline. Is that what you're asking?
Yes. So that Helam, and that's going to be related, how that relates to Tainug, Ava Batanugim.
I don't know if it relates. I don't
That's
know.
Okay, that's my question. How that
That you have to go back to learn earlier, or maybe later he'll talk about it. How it relates, you could explain
Yes.
in many ways, but he doesn't explain how it relates right here, at least. He may have explained it earlier. I think Ba'ava B'chol Meidecha, he may have explained it.
And that's the 1345 and on the Ava B'chol the
Probably even earlier. Probably even earlier. Let me see. From the third level of the Hamtokas Hagvuris. Let's see here. I think it begins maybe third level of the Hamtoka begins where? Let's see. Yeah, page 1325 and on. But you have to learn the whole thing. The whole theme of Ayin Beis of first half of volume 3 is all about that, one way or another.
Right. Okay.
At the end of the day, it's going to be a combination of Helam and Gili. Helam is closer to Etzem, and Gili makes it integrates it. So you need both. That's why we need the Malachim. That's why we need all the Giluyim. You need both Oir and Yesh. The Yesh reveals the Etzem ultimately, and the Oir makes it revealed. I should say the Yesh expresses the Etzem, and the Oir makes it revealed and experienced. So you want both. Etzem begili is the expression often used in Chassidus.
Not to give too crass of an example.
I would say this. I would just one more second. I would say that the koiches atzmim of the neshama, which means it's Ava Rabba and Ava B'Tainugim, is part of that. When you experience the Shtaba B'Gufa D'Malka, if you're embracing God in his entirety, you're embracing both his expressions through revelation, which is like everything that's revealed, and also embracing his very etzem, which is a Helam Ha'atzmi beyond revelation. So I would say that's where it connects. That ultimately, when the soul below reaches these highest levels, everything comes together. The power of God's revelation, the power of God's concealment, and the neshama embraces it all and experiences it all. And they come together because each of them reveal or express a different aspect of Atzmos. Did you follow what I said now?
Yeah, but I'm connected to.
Can't hear you. You're breaking up.
Eliezer,
I'm trying to connect it not just to Gilu Atzmos, but Tainug, specifically Tainug. How, because the Rebbe is talking about Tainug.
But that you'll need to go look into. He doesn't talk about it too much detail. The details he's spoken about. What do you mean by Tainug anyway? What do you mean by Tainug?
Well, the Rebbe was saying how we want to bring about Yom Shekula Shabbos, Tainug Ba'ava B'Tainugim, a level of the Shema should learn to lead to Avos Hashem and loving Hashem, and these levels of Tainug, of pleasure, which is the ultimate, I think, experience of Atzmos is Tainug. How this relates to the Helam Ha'atzmi that is a concealment of Tainug, and quite often diametrically opposed to tragic. There's a lot of tragedy going on in Gullus, and that I'm having a little difficulty wrapping my head around.
Tragedy is not the Tainug.
That's what I mean.
Tragedy is not the Tainug. The tragedy is rooted and possible due to the concealment. And frankly, Tainug Atzmi is also a very high state that's beyond revelation. Tainug is not necessarily always revealed. But it's a combination of both. Listen, the same God that can reveal pleasure can also conceal. When you reach that level of Atzmos, where you see that the revelation and the concealment come from the same place, that's ultimately Mashiach. That's Mashiach. Where you see it's all united as one. We're not talking about the tragedy now. Tragedy is the unfortunate, thing that we are trying to eliminate.
Right.
So we're not talking about tragedy. We're talking about the the root of all concealments comes back to the Helama Atzmi. The root of all revelation goes back to the Gilia Atzmi. So God has the power to reveal and bring many blessings, reveal blessings, but he has also the power to conceal, which can cause ultimately the tragedies and the different concealments in this world. But when you're dealing on the level of Atzmos, they're both coming from the same one Etzem.
Right.
How do
So
you,
the
sorry.
Atzmas, Helama Atzmi is ultimately has its, let's say, side effects or residual casualties as it's revealed Lamata Masort Fachim down in this world, Helama Atzmi, which is the ultimate level of the mystery of godliness, what we're going to cleave to in times of Geula in a beautiful, loving way, but comes as it comes down and revealed in this way in this world right now.
Only now, not when Mashiach comes. Once you reveal its true purpose, it won't lead to anything negative.
Right. It will be because there will not be any more tragedy in the world in the first place.
Because we'll understand what the concealment purpose was in the first place. That you'll understand that the whole purpose of the concealment was just to express God's power to conceal, not, God forbid, that humans should abuse it and turn it into a Holocaust.
Right. Okay.
One question I had is just a very, I don't know, high level, or how do you not take all this and conclude that essentially if you have really evil people that are just don't seem to manifest any godliness and behave in really awful, the worst ways, you're suggesting that actually those are the best people. They're just completely in concealment, but if their neshama could only...
I would never suggest that they're the best people.
But do you understand? But if you say that the greatest revelation is in the darkest of dark, you're saying
only when it's revealed, not when it's abused.
I said those people have the potential. I said they're rotten people, but you're saying they have the potential to be the brightest people, the most illuminated or illuminating.
If they do tshuva, yes. If they do tshuva, with a condition that they have to do something about it. What's wrong with that? Balit tshuva are higher than tzaddikim, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Look what happened. I mean, there's
a big condition. There's a need to do tshuva. It's not. There's no way you can say that somebody who's a terrible person, he's in that place. No, if he does tshuva and he repairs his ways and asks mechila and forgiveness, and even he may even have to be punished, or say this. He has to pay the consequences of his actions. That's why the Torah allows for capital punishment. If everyone be'etzim is good, how can you kill anyone?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Good responses. Whoa.
Also think about why. Yitzchak wanted to give Esav the blessing and not Yaakov, because Esav ultimately had the biggest potential had he done the right thing.
Or look at Paro. Paro became the king of Nineveh, and he did tshuva, and he made a huge kiddush Shem when he was able to bring all the Gentile people that lived there to tshuva, the highest levels of a tshuva. Paro himself. So that was a kiddush Shem.
No, he became Jonah. You mean?
No, he became the king of Nineveh. Paro became the king of Nineveh.
It's a midrash or what?
Yes, it's in Midrashim, right, Rabbi Jacobson? It's well known that when it says that nobody escaped except one, Levad, it was Paro escaped the Kriyas Yamsuf. He went to Nineveh, became the king of Nineveh, and when Yonah came to him, he was and he told him, "You got to do tshuva, or you're going to be overturned." He caused his whole nation to do tshuva and and that was what Yonah was afraid of, that they were going to be able to so to speak, outshine the Jewish people. That's why he didn't want to do his nevuah in the first place, because he was worried that they would show that they can do tshuva. How come the Jewish nation is not doing it at the time? But yes, he made a huge kiddush Hashem, Paro. Ultimately.
Great, Mashal Eliezer. Thank you very much. Great.
Just for the record, the next number of pages, I'm just counting the pages, probably goes till from 1455 till 1462. So we're talking about 7 pages. Is all going to be explanation of how darkness increases and elicits and draws out the powers of the neshama. So there's going to be plenty more discussion on this. I'm assuming that he's going to refer back to the Helam Atzmi that we've learned. But either way, it's connected. So we'll get there. He's not finished the subject, just for the record.
Does he ever continue? I don't remember the Shemona Esrei. I mean, we're learning Shema, how sweet the sweetness of Shema. Does it ever get, or is it missing?
I think here and there, the Rebbe Rashab threw in a little about Shemoneh Esrei. He talked about Psukei D'Zimra. If you gather it all together, you have a pretty good picture. He spoke about Shemoneh Esrei earlier, at the bottom of page. I don't know if you remember that. The difference between the Hamayach Be'echad. I think it was Shema and the difference between Shema and Shemoneh Esrei. But yeah, on bottom of page 1441, spoke about Shemoneh Esrei and Shema. I don't know how much, we'll see. It's hard for me to say. We'll see what he says. We'll see where he goes. But if you, as I said, it's scattered somewhat, but if you bring it all together, you have a lot here. You have Psukei D'Zimra for sure, talked about Birchas Krishma, Shema. So you have the picture. And also earlier, I put together, I think I mentioned all the places in Ayin Beis where he talks about prayer, that you could have like a collection of all the prayer explanations in Ayin Beis.
Really?
And if you go back to volume 2 and 1, there's plenty more. Here, we're talking here.
It's on your website, that thing?
I haven't posted it. It's in my own note. I have a whole booklet of like a journal of notes that I wrote on Ayin Beis. I'm happy to share it.
If you do get a chance, please post it if you can.
Yeah, I think it's in my handwriting. I think it's handwritten in Hebrew. That's the thing. I don't know if I wrote it in English. Okay. Good stuff, right?
Can you say anything nice how to transform an unpleasant 24 hours we face to a very meaningful and pleasurable, almost? I don't want to say that word necessarily, but there you go.
Well, I'll just share the mashal of Rabbi Hillel Parasher. Rabbi Hillel Parasher gives an example for the 9 days, for 3 weeks actually, including the 9 days, and of course for Tisha B'Av, the Rebbe cites a number of places, of a teacher who was teaching a student, and then he had his desire, this burning desire to reveal to the student a completely unprecedented revelation that he never ever shared. But the teacher has to prepare himself and shift gears from his regular flow to give him now this new revelation. So the teacher falls silent because he's preparing himself, goes back into his thoughts, collecting his thoughts to prepare to give this great gift to his student. The student is sitting to the teacher and suddenly sees his teacher became silent. And he doesn't know why. He thinks maybe the teacher is angry at him, or maybe the teacher just abandoned him or left him. So he goes off thinking that the teacher that's it. The connection has been severed. When in fact, the teacher was actually even having deeper love for him in that silence because he was preparing to teach him this new revelation. So the Hillel Parasha says that's why the 3 weeks are 3. Chabad. How could you compare the 3 weeks to Chabad? Because Hashem is going back to the level of Chabad before he's going to be mamshech back from Chabad into Zah, which is the 7 midas, Zah and Malchus of the Shiva de Nechemta, the 7 weeks of comfort, which is when the teacher returns and begins to reveal what was going on in his mind during those 3 weeks. So you can think about that when the fast begins, unless Mashiach comes earlier today. You could think about that, and that's why Mashiach is born in the throes when the fire is highest tomorrow afternoon. We say Nachem in Mincha is because Mashiach was born then. Why is Mashiach born in the dark? Because that's the teacher is giving birth to Mashiach, but to do that, there's a silence, at least temporary. So we have to understand the deeper meaning behind Tisha B'Av in that sense.
I've never heard that story in all the years. That's a beauty. Hillel Paracher, you said?
Yeah, the Rebbe brings in Likutei Sichos, volume 2, in later years as well. Yeah, it's a mimer. It's a fascinating mimer from Hillel Paracher about the 3 weeks of affliction, plus of the Paranusa, the 7 weeks of comfort, Shiva de Nechemta, and the 2 weeks of Tshuva that comes after Rosh Hashanah, between Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot.
What do those 2 weeks represent?
The Aliyah and Atik, the Arich and Atik.
Wow.
So you have
Well,
Chabad,
That's
Is that the whole
amazing.
thing? Yeah.
I never
the
heard
10
that.
spheres, and then the Aliyah to Arich and Atik. Yeah, I did write up. I wrote this up in English on my site, a whole explanation of this mimer of Rab Hill. It's unbelievable stuff.
What, Meaningful Life Center?
Yeah,
Or-
meaningfullife.com. Just look up 7 weeks of comfort or 7 steps toward dignity. I mean, I turned it very psychological as a whole process of how you grow through difficulties, through to higher levels of comfort and revelation. And remember, it gives all birth to Rosh Hashanah. Remember, Yom Kippur is born out of the sadness after the Chet Egel, right?
Right.
We're hoping Rabbi Yitzchak quotes it.
Mhm.
Yeah. If you don't find it, let me know. It's easy to find. It should be simple.
Okay,
Or
I'll
just, you know what? Go on our site and just type in Rab Hillel Parich or something. It should come up.
find it. I was gonna post it without saying anything, but I'll find it. Leonard, I assume there's no class tomorrow, Rabbi, correct?
I assume so as well. I mean, what better time to learn Chassidus? But I think everybody's busy with crying and mourning and grieving. If Mashiach comes, we'll be busy with Mashiach.
What are we allowed to learn tomorrow? I mean, because
Anything around Tisha B'Av, you're allowed to learn. Masechta Moyet Cotton, Eicha, of course, Kinus, all
but
the.
not Tanya or regular Chassidus.
I don't know. Some learn, some don't. There's no rule.
Yeah, that's why I asked you, because I can't get a straight answer.
The Rashag, the Rebbe's brother-in-law, once he was sitting Shiva, and he asked the Rebbe, when you sit Shiva, can you learn Chassidus? You're not supposed to learn Nigla. So the Rebbe answered an unbelievable answer. He said, "Ein moisun razei teira el lemisha doyeg liboy bekirboy." The secrets of Torah are not given to anyone but who has anxiety in his heart. So the Rebbe said, what better anxiety is when you're sitting Shiva to learn Chassidus? So based on that, Tisha B'Av is a day of Shiva. But on the other hand, I wouldn't do it publicly. You know the story with the Rebbe? The Rebbe said that he went into his teacher on Tisha B'Av. He saw he was learning. So he said, Tisha B'Av. So he said to the Rebbe, using the Rebbe's first name, he said, or second name, he said, if they're gonna whip me, let them whip me for learning on Tisha B'Av.
Says, similar but similar types of things other non-Lubavitchers say about the 25th of December, and the Frierdiker Rebbe said he didn't like that stuff.
You mean learning during that night? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this one.
Listen, I am not giving a ruling. You want to ask your local rabbi, please do so. I don't think we should learn officially. I think it's Tisha B'Av. It's that day of learning. The Rebbe then was saying Kinnis didn't have Farbrengens on Tisha B'Av, even though in Tafshin and Aleph, the last year, the Rebbe did speak, right? Remember that? 8:30 came down, half hour.
Yeah, my grandson was just learning Eicha with a student he teaches.
People learn the mimer. There's a mimer Eicha from the Rebbe in Tafshin Lamed Aleph, 1971. There's a mimer on Eicha from the Rebbe, and there's a few mimarim that talk about things connected to Tisha B'Av you're allowed to learn, basically. The Tzemach Tzedek has whole Rishimis where he explains Eicha actually in a positive way, so that you can learn. If you look at what to learn, there's plenty to learn.
I mean, what we're learning now about concealment and darkness.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying. I look. If you told me you learn this tomorrow morning yourself, I will not be upset.
But I don't want to get whipped.
Depends whipped by whom. By the right party, I don't have a problem. It depends by whom. I don't want to be whipped by one of these judgmental, taskmasters.
I hear you. Wow.
I'll just share a story. You might remind me. The Frierdiker Rebbe was once bringing Shabbos, and he was waiting for each of the masmid, the chassid, each of the masmid, Yitzchak Gorowitz, and he was davening. So the Frierdiker Rebbe sent his secretary, Yecheskel Fagin, to go call each of the masmid. So he saw that each was davening, so he went over and told him the Rebbe is asking for you. Okay, came back 5 minutes, 10 minutes, again, he's not there. So the Frierdiker Rebbe says, where is Itche? So he goes back and tells each of the masmid, the Rebbe is waiting for you. He's asking for you, second time. Again, nothing. Finally, a third time, so and again, nothing. So Chatzah Fagin tells the Frierdiker Rebbe, Itche darf man schmeißen. That's what he said. Itche deserves to be schmeiß. It's like whipped. He deserves some petch, right? Schmeißen in Yiddish means like slapped. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, yeah, aber wer wird es tun? Who's worthy of slapping Rabbi Yitzchak the Masmid?
Wow.
So he may deserve it, but there was no one had the right to do it. Frierdiker Rebbe said that. Yeah.
And if he's including himself, that's something.
Yeah. No,
It's a great response.
He wasn't defying the Frierdiker Rebbe. He was davening. Maybe he should have listened, but it wasn't because he was doing something wrong. He was davening,
It's unbelievable because it's a master was so devoted to the Frierdiker Rebbe that, and even though I think they said to stay here, when he left and he went back to Europe.
I know, got killed. And was killed.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember in Ayin Beis when the Rebbe came down on Tisha B'Av, he made with his hands. I saw it clearly. To like
Nun Aleph.
Was it Nun Aleph? When he made with his hands, the people should. What were we singing? I forget what we were singing. Gazalzong the Gula. I forget, but
maybe I don't remember. Maybe I don't remember.
But
that was the only time the Rebbe ever spoke on Tisha B'Av, and it was interesting. It was the last Tisha B'Av at Eisata till today. The Rebbe spoke to us. It was the year 1991, the summer 91. The next winter would be already Chav Zayin Adar.
Right, that's right, 1991. Right, that's right.
Yeah, I remember. I wrote up that Farbrengen, that Sikha. The Rebbe edited it. Came down, I think, 8:25, and the fast ended around 9ish or something.
That was the same year the Rebbe came and watched it shake Lulav and Esther.
That was the same.
That
was Ayin Beis. No, that was Ayin Beis. That was the Sukkos already.
The beginning of Ayin Beis. Yeah, right. Still 91, right.
That was the same year. Nun Aleph was also the year the Rebbe had a second Farbrengen. Remember Nosei, Shabbos after Shavuos, where the Rebbe at the end of the Shabbos came into Farbrengen, washed.
Yeah, I was there that time. I saw the Rebbe come down with the was a quart and a towel.
You were there. You were in shul.
Yeah. I turned around and saw the Rebbe. It was like everyone was just diving. It was like I was under this low ceiling over there. The Rebbe was just walking to his place over there. It was amazing, incredible.
And following that, and Rosh Hashanah, I think the Rebbe Farbrengen 3 times.
I don't remember that.
And Rosh Hashanah
Incidentally,
was
I think
he gave you a sikha, bringing the sikha 3 times, 3 of them.
Incidentally, I think I found the essay, Rabbi. I posted it in the WhatsApp, also here in the chat of Zoom. But I posted it.
Let me stop the recording. We ended the paragraph on page 14.